Just like having a hay bale in the back of your pickup truck and a gun in your gun rack in your pickup truck doesn't make you a cowboy or an Indian. Wearing a uniform doesn't make you courageous. Courage comes from our heart, in the heart of every man and woman that has it, not from their uniform, not from the words that they call themselves, not from their rank or their privilege. Courage is the gold that makes a man or a woman. And it troubles me that so much is being made of symbols that are empty, whether it's uniforms or the title of being a veteran, or just the opposite, criticizing somebody because they are a different colored skin, or a different uniform, or a different religion. It's no good. So I've decided to talk for a few minutes about the heroes among us that I'm certain of. And that would be the smoke jumpers that work for the CIA. After this Man Gulch disaster happened in August of 1949, within 2 years, actually about a year, the Central Intelligence Agency got to be formed to replace the Office of Strategic Services, or OSS, that had been active as our main intelligence service during the World War II. CIA right away was having to produce results during the Korean War. And they sent out 2 people to be trained in Missoula to be what they called parachute dispatch officers. And the guy that trained him, Garth Orsberg, was a student at the university, and he got called in from classes because he'd been a smoke jumper to train them, and they had the aircraft and everything. And they trained these 2 guys from the CIA and then sent them off. Well, when the CIA got wind of the capabilities that were in Missoula with the smoke jumpers, they came in the spring of 1951, and they, as my old high school football coach, Joe McDonald, who became the president of the Sayers Kootenai College, he was a new man. He was brand new with the smoke jumpers at 9 Mile. And because he'd gotten there late, almost late, he stayed with the old timers in the old, they called the old man's barracks. And he told me how he watched these guys go in, talk to the CIA recruiter, and come back one at a time, pack their stuff, not say a word, and they just left. So 10 of them went for the Korean War, one in a group of 7, one in a group of 3. There's more about that I can talk to you about, but I'm not right now. And then later on, as the 50s rolled by, and the problems started to happen in Tibet with the Chinese communists, and they were just terribly killing the Tibetan tribesmen. The Dalai Lama had to get out of that country, and he got out with 70 of his family, and they went over a pass into India. But it's little known that the 2 radio teams that kept in touch with President Eisenhower in real time in Washington were Tibetan citizens who had been trained by the CIA and dropped in there on parachutes, 2 teams of 2 men. And then later on, when the Dalai Lama was waiting because the money in Tibet was no good anymore with the Chinese crawling all over the place, they waited for a yellow parachute, and it came with rupees. And then they were told that that Nehru, the head of India, was willing to accept their presence, and they went over into India, and we now have the Dalai Lama among us. That was a very low-key operation, but it grew over time, and a lot of more smoke jumpers got involved in dropping Tibetan rangers into the high Himalayas, and several were here. I've talked to 3 who did that, of about 7 that are listed in a letter in the Air America archives down in Dallas. But anyhow, they had a painting made of what their effort was, and it's on display in the secret art gallery at Langley Base in the CIA's headquarters in Virginia. It's called Campa Airlift into Tibet, and it shows a C-130 aircraft with the back door down, flying at 32,000 feet up in the high Himalayas, dropping 16 Tibetan Rangers with all their equipment and weapons, with combat lanterns in the door. Yeah, I talked to several people who did that. It's pretty risky. And some of those aircraft barely got back to Thailand with any gasoline in their tanks or any fuel in their tanks. That was done by people from Montana and Idaho who really had the courage and the skill, and that's the important thing. They had the skill that was needed. And that's going to be something I'm going to pursue here with this radio program, is how we can learn skills and then use those skills to get ourselves to higher levels of skills or higher level of learning. You know, there's lots of ways to learn, you know, experience, training, you know, academia, but the money's short now and we need to do that. I was fortunate to use smoke jumping as a skill to make some money to go to graduate school. And I know a lot of the others were doing the same thing. So it kind of fits what I'm after, and that's talking about what we can do with the current generation to get them the resources they need. And being skilled is not a bad thing. Being skilled is a good thing. So what happened then is when the Bay of Pigs came up with President Kennedy, some smoke jumpers were down in Red Oahu, Guatemala, and they were training Cubans. And they were training members of the Guatemalan army. Probably kind of a deal the CIA had with them to use that base at Red Oahu. And then just before the Bay of Pigs happened, they were moved over to Laos. And we're doing the same thing over in Laos, only they were doing it in support. This is in the early 60s, in support of the war in Vietnam. And a secret base was built in Long Cheng, T-I-E-N or C-H-E-N-G, Long Cheng, up in the mountains of Laos. And from there, aircraft would go. Sometimes they would be in dogfights. They were called Ravens. But helicopters, aircraft would go to rescue our downed pilots. A lot of people's lives were saved. But that base, that secret CIA base at Long Cheng, was nicknamed Big Sky because the head case officer that was working with General Vang Pao, the head of the CIA secret army of Montagnards or Hmong or Mayo tribesmen, could speak Mayo, and they got along okay. And he was the case officer, and he was from Ovando, Montana. His name was Jerry Daniels. His code name was Hog. And later on, when all of it was over and the smoke had cleared, the Hmong people that had made it back to this country after that war to escape being killed by the Pathet Lao communists, they would tell their social worker, a woman named Morrison, who wrote a book called The Sky is Falling, and that's when it started coming out. The Hmong started talking about these guys. There were a lot of Montanans, a lot of smoke jumpers involved in that whole operation. And I know quite a number of them, and they're really remarkable men. At that time, there weren't any women in the smoke jumpers, but there are now. So, The Sky is Falling is a good book. Another good book is a book written about Jerry Daniels himself, called Hog's Exit, you know, how he died. He died mysteriously in Bangkok. He was doing his best to get those refugees back, those Hmong refugees back to this country. And Pam Roberts, who runs Rattlesnake Production down in Bozeman, her first gig was as a social worker, and she was up there in Thailand, and she had to bring back 4 of Vang Pao's wives to Missoula to link up with Jerry Daniels' mother, who really did a lot for these people because of what Jerry told her. They were very brave. They helped us a lot. And down in the Air America archives, there's pictures of Hmong tribesmen wearing smoke jumper gear. I know they must have got it from some base somewhere. They didn't make it themselves. Anyhow, it's a huge story, and when I hear people make fun of other people because they're among us, they're refugees, they have different colored skins or speak different languages, it really makes me angry. It's stupid. Because courage comes from our hearts. And I'll leave it with that right now. And then one other thing, the best explanation is published by the National Smoke Jumper Organization. You can Google it, and from their store buy this book. the smoke jumpers and the CIA. And it's got a lot of detail in there, pictures of the secret base, pictures of a lot of the people that were involved with the CIA that were smoke jumpers. There was at least 100. And of course, several were killed. One was missing and he died as a missing in action. It's a big story, but it's about courage. And it's about not bragging about what you do all the time, which seems to be a thing now. None of these guys ran for office on their record. And I'm disheartened that we have people that think that just because they're in the military, somehow they're heroes. No, we need heroes in our Congress right now, and they're, at least on the Republican side, they're pretty damn